Okay, so this is Haven again, and we are ready to start actually building a component of our game, and we are going to create the terrain, which is one of the good reasons that we brought in the terrain assets in the last video. If you don't have terrain assets in your video, please watch the previous part 1A, I believe, and you'll see how we did that and where we got them from. You are free at any time, of course, to use your own assets. We haven't quite learned how to make them yet. We'll get there sooner or later, but it's really nice that the terrain assets are available for us because even though a lot of people use them, you can really get very detailed and make them your own with how you use them. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to get rid of this cube, and this I used for demonstration at the end of the last video. So right clicking on game object here, which is my cube, I'm just going to choose to delete it, and that's done. Because I'm making a brand new scene here with my terrain, I'm going to save this as a scene. So I'm going to go to File and Save Scene. Well, actually, let me go here first. And File, Save Scene As, and in here, in Scenes, that's my folder I made, remember? I can put in here terrain. And now you'll see that here in my Scenes folder, I have a terrain scene. And so if I decide to make other scenes at other points, I can always come back in here and work on this one. It's still in my project. A scene, in case I don't think I mentioned it in my last one, a scene is like levels of a game. So where you have Mario on one level and maybe he goes through a pipe after collecting his coins, he turns out to be like in some winter area of the game. Well, that would be a different level, a different scene. So we can save them all separately here in our actual assets view. And that's why I made this scene folder, which was to store that in. So when I get done creating this scene, I am once again going to go ahead to File and Save Scene so that I don't lose any of the work that I've done. I'm going to start off with the terrain, and it's just a flat mesh piece that we can build our landscape from and on. So in Game Components, up at the top here, I can go to 3D Object because it is a 3D object I'm working on. And I can come down to where it says Terrain. When I click that and it enters into the scene, you'll notice that the corner of it is actually put with the center of the grid here, okay? We're not going to worry about that right now. That's how we want it to be. Okay, but this is actually really, really big. It's like 2000 by 2000. And we don't need it that big because we're going to put a character in here, right? A character that walks around or travels around. And we really don't want them traveling over 2000. That's the resolution, 2000. You can think of 2000 as like 2000 units, which would be 2000 meters, or in feet it would be 2000 times 3. So it's quite a long way for a character to walk and travel in a game. And it really does make a game much bigger than it needs to be, both for game quality, for the size that it's going to take on your computer, for all kinds of things. It's just way too big. So we can change this by going up to the inspector because we have this selected. So here we have everything for our the component for our terrain. And in the terrain section, look for the settings button. And if we scroll down to the resolution area, we have terrain width, terrain length, and terrain height. Now, terrain width is how wide it's going to be, and length is how long it's going to be. So let's change these right away to say 200. The height is how high up can we terraform it. Terraforming is an SL term, um, and that is to create the landscape, to raise mountains, to lift up, sides for hills or whatever. So we don't really want this to be too big. I'm going to put mine at about 100. When that's done, uh, you don't see any noticeable change on the height because we haven't lifted up any of the land yet to reach this maximum height of 100. We do have to consider that we might want to make valleys or rivers or oceans or recessed areas in the terrain rather than extruded upward areas. So by clicking on the terrain and coming into the second button here, which is paint height settings, um, height settings, sorry, I pronounce that wrong all the time. Coming in here, we can set this height. So where it says height here, we can go ahead and take this to, let's say, 50 and hit flatten. And now basically what we're doing is we're telling Unity that when we lower this land, don't let it lower than 50 meters or 50. And actually it's been raised up to exactly that amount above the grid. So when we do lower this or any part of this to its lowest settings, it will be on top of the grid here, okay? So now let's go ahead and we have our terrain selected, and we're going to actually come in here and start terraforming it. So the very first button we have in the terrain settings is actually called raise and lower terrain, and it tells you exactly how to do it. Click to raise and hold down shift to lower. So we have a variety of brushes. We're just going to stick with the very first one to begin with. Brush size, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. It's how big is your brush. You see at 100 here, it's quite big. When I lower this down, it gets a lot smaller, almost like a pinpoint there. So let's just go ahead, since we're starting at the beginning, let's take this up to just over halfway, uh, right around there. Opacity is the strength. How quickly do you want this to be pulled up? How strong of a pull do you want your brush to have on your actual terrain? Well, we can start rather low and see what happens and build up as we go. But there's two things. One is that this is very additive, which means you can draw. So let's just draw here at the edge, right? And it's lifting the terrain up. And you'll see that as I keep my mouse pressed and I keep drawing over that same area, it adds height to it. It just keeps adding and adding and adding, okay? And the other thing is that this is a big area, so we can actually take our brush size up quite a bit, and we can bring our strength up just a little bit because we do have a lot of area to cover, and so we don't want to get down there one little vertex at a time and start adjusting it. So then put your terrain in a position that you think works best for you to start with, and you can actually just start drawing mountains. And so I'll just draw a little bit of kind of like a landscape here. And we are kind of far out. Remember, this is 200 meters. And so let me get a little bit stronger. So it's lifting it up a little bit more. And actually, we're going to probably go a little bit stronger because it's taking quite a while to do something like this. So you see, now we're going a little bit quicker. And again, you know, you might have an idea of how you want your land to be. right now we're just kind of experimenting, so I don't really have anything in particular that I'm trying to create or to make. So I'm just kind of going around here and having a little bit of fun with it. You might notice that maybe this isn't quite going up as far as you want, but the way that you're looking at it can really be a little bit of a fooling point, because we set it at 100. This is 200. It can go up this high. See? So we still have quite a ways that we can lift this up. If we do something like this, you can see it happening a little bit quicker. I'll put my strength up even more now, because it's just taking way too long like that. Now, another thing is that sometimes it's easier to terraform when the terrain is actually textured. Right now it's just plain white, and so we don't get a feel of what we've got going on here. So we can stop at this point if we want to, and we can start adding texture to it. But what I think I want to do is lower my strength quite a bit, and I want to hold down my shift, and maybe I'll put a few little crevices or valleys, or maybe a place for a little river at some point. So I'll just lower that. And again, this is additive, so as I do this, it's getting lower and lower and lower. I don't have to keep clicking on it, and you can see underneath how that's lowering. You can even come down here and pull it out a little bit. I think that's good for an example of how this works, right? Okay, so maybe we'll just do one more little spot over here where it's being lowered. And again, you can adjust the size of your brush so you can get like a really thin little river or creek running through areas as well. Okay, and so now this paint button is really fun, because if you click on it, what you have here is the textures section, and this is actually painting textures. The first one that we use is actually going to be used to cover the entire terrain. So if I click on edit textures and I click on add texture, what happens is we get this pop-up window, and in this one, the very first one here, click on select, and this window here pops up. And this actually has all the textures that are in our assets here. So let's see, I lost my window for a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through these, and hopefully there's one that I like, that I can find. And I did see one before called Cliff Rocks. There we go. So Cliff Layered Rocks, double clicking on it sets it into this window, closes the other one, and I can hit add. And you'll see that that is added to the entire terrain. That is our base texture. And so that starts to give us a little bit more insight as to what we're actually creating here. We can come back to the raise lower terrain button, and we can, of course, continue terraforming. It's a little easier to see now, if you ask me, that we have that texture on there. So now another nice thing about this is that you have different brushes. So for instance, this brush here, the scattered brush looking thing, you can see the blue. See how it's all scattered about? So when you click, you can actually add like a rocky effect. So you have all kinds of brushes to play with. And sometimes this can get a little jagged maybe, or maybe there's too much of a difference between your mountain peaks. We all want things to look the way we want them to look. So what you can do is you can come into this third button, and this is our smooth one. And with our strength set probably usually a little bit higher than our brush was, we can come over this, and let me pick a different brush here, and I can start to smooth them out. So I pulled up areas, but now I can smooth them down a little bit. So they're rocky, but they're not jagged. Although if you want jagged, you could very well have it jagged. Alright, so I like this texture. It's looking really good, but I think that my pattern is repeating way too much for the type of terrain that I have going. So back into the Paint tab and Edit Texture again, only this time I'm going to choose Edit Texture instead of Add. And in here I have the ability to size up or size down that texture, and that will change the repeats. You see, now I don't have as many lines here. Another thing that I could do is I could come in here and edit texture. And let's see, let's take the Y up to 50. Let's take the X up to 50, but also the offset. We can change the offset, let's say to 15. So that takes it a little bit different as well. Okay, so I like that the way it is. And we are good to go on to the next part. So what is the next part? Well, the next part is adding some more texture to the terrain. We can't have the whole thing looking like that. That's just really boring. No matter how nice you do this, it's going to get boring. So clicking on Edit Textures, we're going to add another one. Select again, just like we did before, only this time I'm going to select a greeny grassy color and just add it. I'm going to hit Edit Textures and I'm going to add another texture, and this time I'm going to add one that's a little bit of a contrast to the first one. So maybe grass and rock or grass muddy. How about if I do grass muddy? Double click it and add it. Now, making sure that these are selected, and these also are additive features, which means as I cross over an area that's already got this painted on there, it will add to it, and that will be determined by the opacity. So, for example, if I come in really close here, and I have this brush selected, and I have a low opacity, and I start to paint here, you can see that it's covering up really quite a bit. As I go over it again, it starts to get a little bit darker. Not much though. Let me put this up all the way. It's not happening as much on this texture as it has or it does with other ones. So there we go. We can just color that all in if we want. We can also erase the effects of this by either doing Control Z or choosing our base texture and painting that back over what we painted. It's kind of like erasing it. Also, you can do this and then hold down your Shift. Oh, actually, no, it doesn't work on this one. Sorry. Forget I said that. Forget I said that. Let me go ahead and erase that. Okay, so now what I want to do, though, is I want to take a scatter brush, which I really like, and I can come in here with a small size, and now I can texture a little bit there. I can take my muddy grass, and I can texture with that as well. So there we go. We can start doing things like that. You can even throw a little bit of rock back on there. I always just playing with the brushes and seeing what they give you, because depending on the texture that you're using, you can get all kinds of effects with the different brush types. So always mess around with those and kind of see what you get with your different brushes. Alright, so There's another thing about the terraform that I really like, and I'm going to come over here to an area where I've got room to move around and play. And that is the height one again. So 1 second. Okay, so it's the height one again, or height. And I'm going to go ahead and choose just a regular small brush. I like these brushes with the soft edges. And the height is set to 50 for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my terrain. And let's say that I want to have like a flat plateau outside this line of mountains that is about this high up, right? So I can hold shift and click right there on that spot. And now Unity tells me that the spot that I clicked on is at 30 or 63 point some odd meters. And so now if I come here and I start clicking, you'll see that it is making a plateau at that area. Let me put the brush size up a little bit and continue that on so that you can see what's happening. So I'm getting a nice flat piece of land right where I clicked. I kind of told Unity, you know, right there is where I want to raise the land to. And it's making a nice flat area for me right where I wanted it to be. And you can just keep doing this and get a nice look, if you ask me. Now, what's really fun about this thing that I'm doing here, and I might actually lower this a little bit. I think I will. So I'm going to go like right here, and that takes it down to 54. And my brush size I'll put up, my opacity I'll put up, and then I'll start to lower this in some areas and raise it in others to make it nice and flat here. Okay, and then I'm going to come and click here, and I can start doing that again. Click here and start doing that again. This one is not turning out as good as it does when I just did it randomly before. So let me try one more time, just because I really want you to see how nice this can look. So let me start with my height right about here, and it gives me a nice little edge. You see that? And now I can click here for this new height. And actually, I started too close to that. So let me do it like back here a little bit. I'm just going to bring it up to that height, or about that height. Right there. I can come lower and start building up another little plateau space right like this. I can go even lower and do something like that. And now these are really fun. And these are nice to texture too, because if I were to come back in my painting and choose my terrain, let's go back here. And why is it? Oh, because I have the wrong one selected. And I have a bad brush selected. Now why is this not doing it for me? Oh, brush size is way too small. Okay. You have to make sure you check all your little buttons there. Okay, so those are all erased. And if anybody wonders why this is disappearing, it's because of how close I am to it. My camera's really close. So I'm going to take this green one and lower the size a little. And now I can start brushing in, but it's just way too full. I can start brushing in like that. That's a lot better. Get a little bit of a scattered effect here. And this allows me to get it right on just the very top of those flat spots. And then you can see that the edges of it here are actually plain. They're just the rock texture. And if you want, you can add, of course, a little bit of the brown. Kind of add some variety to that color there. And if you're going to come in here and do some of your mountains and your peaks, just remember that it's probably greener near any watering area and down towards the lower parts of the mountains. When you get up to the higher peaks, that's when it gets rockier. So in most cases, you probably won't have it very grassy up there. I'm just going to kind of come around and click a little bit, change to some brown, and maybe add that as it starts to get up towards the top of the mountain tops, you know, like up in this area here. And I'm not going to do too much on this part because, you know, I want to be able to cam in and see what I'm really working on up close. Okay, so that's the start of some of these things here. So let's go on to the next fun part, and that's actually putting more detail to our landscape with objects, things like rocks and trees and stuff like that. So in this next tab, if you click on it, you see that it's a place trees. No trees are defined. So just like everything else, we go to edit the trees and add tree and click this little settings button here, and this will show you the trees that you have. So we can go with like a let's see, there's a willow in here, but let's go with a sycamore tree. So double click on it and add it, and you'll see it here. We can edit trees and add another tree. So maybe we'll add the alder, and okay, and maybe one more tree. So how about something like, actually let's choose a bush, and we'll go add. So now we got a bush there. Now these are a little bit different to work with because these are actually like mesh objects. They're not textures. So if we click on the sycamore tree, you'll see that the brush size is really big, and this is the area in which those trees will be rezzed and placed on our actual terrain. So we can take the brush size down and stuff, or up. It doesn't really matter too much at first. When you got to kind of see what you're going to get before you make too finite of a setting here. Tree density, you have to change this because this isn't an additive feature like the other things were. You have to keep pressing and adding to get more and more on there. So let me show you what I mean. Like if we have a tree density of 24 and we click here, you'll see we get these 3 trees. And you have to keep clicking and you can keep getting more and more. But now if I click and I keep going over this same area, I'm not getting more trees added. But what if that isn't enough? Well, I have to actually literally come in here and raise the density, and then I can click in some more of these trees. I can choose the add alder tree, and I can add some of those. And I don't like when my screen turns black like that. It's a pain in the butt. But, alright, let's see. Let me add density a little bit here. And why am I not getting my... Oh, because my tree density went down for some reason. Alright, there we go. See, so you can add quite a few at once as well. And then we have our bushes. And we can come in here and we can start adding some bushes. Now, this is going to give me a hard time just because it can, and because you're watching me. Why are my bushes not working? I can put the brush size up all I want. Maybe they're too small to be seen right now. Yeah, do you see that? You can't see them, but they're way too small for what I'm using them for. So they're not really showing through here very well. I can change the tree height of them, but they're still not coming up very good. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to remove that tree and then click refresh. Okay. So we do have two types of trees here, which is good because I want to show you how you can remove trees. You see how this is like very heavily populated with them? Maybe you want to have like one type of tree on one side of the terrain and another tree on the other side and just have them gently mix the two different kinds in the middle. Well, if you select the sycamore tree or the alder, it doesn't matter which one, and you hold shift and you erase, they all erase, right? But if you select one tree and you hold control, then you only erase the one type of tree that you have selected. Okay, so I just got rid of all the sycamore ones. Now let's get rid of the alder ones. Let me get rid of that again. So I have this selected. I'm holding control and now I'm selecting to get rid of the other trees. So you can see that you can add and subtract quite easily the tree that you actually want to. And now you can see how big these trees are turning out because I had changed the random size of the tree. So in case you don't know what this is, the random size means that from this size to this size is the variation that we're going to get on the trees. So this is going to be a very small tree to a very big tree. So you get some small trees and some big trees. If you have them all up here, then you're going to get nothing but big ones. And if you have them both all the way down to this side, you're going to get nothing but small trees. And they're actually not even popping up. That's how small they are. So somewhere right in the middle is usually pretty good. And again, you play with this as you go through it, which is nice as to, you know, that you can erase them and add some more to it quite easily so that you can, you know, make this as much as you want it to the detail that you want it. So that is it for the terrain. Go ahead and create your terrain and give it some character, add a few trees to it, and just learn about them. When you get done with this, go to File and Save Scene. And now this terrain scene has been updated and saved. Go to File and Save Project. I don't know if you could see that. It might have been off the screen a little bit, but I have a save project on this menu. So I save the project as well. So when I open this again and I open this project, I'll have exactly what I have here. And I will catch you on the next video. Have fun with that. Please make sure that you subscribe and like and share the video with others so that they can play along with us. Thank you.